call the June 17th, 2014 meeting of the Troy Zoning Board of Appeals to order. And we are going to take the roll here in just 1 second. I will just make, for purposes of introductions, a quick run across the table here for the public here and also watching on Cablevision or perhaps the internet. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Glenn Clark, the board chairman, and to my far left, your right, would be Mr. Lambert, then Mr. Eisenbacher, Mr. Krent, and this is the vice chairman of the board, Mr. Bloomingdale, and also Mr. Courtney. And we have one member tonight that's not here so far, but the night is young, so we'll see what happens here momentarily. To my far right is Mr. Evans, who represents the city administration for purposes of these issues that we have before us tonight. And then we also have Ms. Dufresne, who is an assistant city attorney for the city of Troy, who provides legal advice to the board. And at this point in time, I'd like to call Mr. Evans to call the roll, please.
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Courtney.
Here.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Here.
Mr. Neal. Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
Okay, we do have quorum, so we can proceed. And at this point in time, before we move into the agenda, we have procedures for the board. So it's important for people who come before the board to give commentary or have an actual application before us to consider tonight to understand these procedures before we proceed. So I'm going to call on Vice Chairman Bloomingdale to give a run through of those procedures for your understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a group of 7 of your neighbors or peers appointed by City Council to pass judgment on requests for variances and other matters that may be brought before them. A variance is a relaxation of the literal provisions of the zoning ordinance. Petitioners must indicate a hardship or practical difficulty running with the land that would warrant the granting of the variance. The procedures are as follows. The board will hear the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. When an item is called, the chairman will verify that the petitioner is present. Then the city administration will summarize the facts of the case. The petitioner will then be given an opportunity to address the board to explain the justification for the action requested. After the petitioner makes their presentation and answers any questions that the board may have, the chairman will open the public hearing. Any person wishing to speak on the request should raise their hand, and when recognized by the chairman, come to the podium. The speaker should identify themselves with their name and address, indicate their relationship to the property in question, for example, the next door neighbor or live behind the property and so forth. State whether they are in favor of or against the variance requested and give reasons for their opinion. Comments must be directed through the chairman. Comments should be kept as brief as possible and closely pertain to the matter under consideration. Only one person will be recognized by the chairman to speak at one time. At the conclusion of the comments, public comments, the chairman will close the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no other public comment will be taken unless in response to a specific question by a member of the board. The board will then make a motion to approve, deny, or table the request. In order for the request to pass, a minimum of 4 votes for approval are needed. If the request is not granted, the applicant has the right to appeal the board's decision to Oakland County Circuit Court.
Thank you, Mr. Bloomingdale. So those are our procedures as we proceed into the actual action items before us tonight. Item number 2 is approval of minutes. And for my fellow board members, is there someone who would like to make a motion, or is there any questions related to those minutes?
So move.
You're moving what, sir?
Approval.
Okay. Mr. Courtney moves approval of the
Second.
Posted minutes, and Mr. Eisenbacher seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, I believe we're prepared for a vote. Mr. Evans?
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Now we move to item 3, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any questions from board members or comments on the agenda that's been posted for our review? Seeing none, I believe we're prepared to move forward. Item number 4 is the hearing of cases before us here tonight. The first one is item A, which is a postponed item, variance request related to John D. Zeri Jr., 931 Brook Lawn, in order to construct an addition to the home, a 13.5-foot variance for the minimum required 35-foot rear yard setback has been brought forward to us. And at this point in time, I'd like to call on Mr. Evans to present the facts of this situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the overhead monitors behind and to the left and right of the board. The subject property is located in a residential neighborhood south of West Big Beaver and east of Adams Road, as indicated by the circled area in red here on the overhead. And I've zoomed in on it. This is actually a corner lot, even though it's it's Brooklawn Street. And as we can see that the subject property is configured somewhat differently than the rest of the subject properties in the neighborhood. On this overhead, I've overlaid the zoning in yellow, and the zoning for all the subject homes in this neighborhood is single-family residential district. Now, the subject of tonight's request involves adding on to the rear of the house. The applicant has provided a picture of the rear of the house, and I've circled the area under consideration for this variance. What he would like to do is add a single-story, a gabled roof enclosed structure to the rear of the house. And these are some samples of what he would like to do. Now, this is a survey of the property, and in the lower left-hand corner is the subject area in question. The rear lot line is actually the westerly lot line. Right here, this rectangle represents the proposed 10 by 20 addition that he would like to add on. Now, the zoning ordinance requires that any new additions to this home be set back from this western property line at least 35 feet. As proposed, the structure will be set back 21.7 feet, so he needs a 13.5-foot setback variance in order to proceed. And I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any questions of Mr. Evans at this time? Yes, sir. Mr. Krent.
Would you happen to know the setback requirement for the front yards, the setback from the street, basically?
I don't know, but I can look that up and give you an answer before you start deliberating.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll come back to Mr. Krent's question in due process. We'll call forward Mr. Zeri, if I'm pronouncing that correct. Hopefully I am. Sherry. Okay, very good. Close, but I guess no cigar. Welcome, and if you would like to address the board at this time, you're completely able to do that. Please proceed.
Thank you for having me. I'd like to first start off, and I'll be as brief as possible, but I have a few things to say. For rescheduling my request for variance for the rear setback, I missed your last public hearing because I was in the hospital with my father, and I'd like to do a special thanks for Paul for explaining that to you guys last month while the hearing was being made and I wasn't there. I've recently downsized my residence in the preparation to retire and found a home in the Troyton Manor subdivision. That's the subdivision that we're talking about. It's 931 Brook Lawn, and it met my needs. It's got some small residential charm, and the neighborhood and architecture is exactly what I'm looking for in downsizing prior to retirement. So prior to me coming to the board requesting this variance, I hired a company called Guarantee Survey Company to do the survey for the lot for the residential plot plan to check for the setback for my proposed project. I ended up talking to a gentleman that owns a company now, Tom Northrop, just to let you know how small of a world it is. His father was the one that did the surveys for the subdivision during the building development in 1955.
Oh.
It's very interesting. In regards to that, he proceeded to look up my lot number, and he asked me what part of the house I was working on. I told him the back porch. Tom asked me if the existing three-season porch was still there, and is that what I'm planning to remove? And I explained to him prior to my purchase, it was already removed. The existing porch, three-season porch, was 10 by 20. Previous to my purchase, the house was a foreclosure, so we're trying to fix it up right now. My request is to have a 13 and a half foot variance for from the current zone requirement for a 35-foot setback to install a reverse gable with a 312 pitch. That's what's on the home right now. That will mimic the same pitch of the home. It's going to be identical. There's not going to be any height differences. There's not going to be any pitch differences. It's not going to stand out in nature at all. My intention is not to overbuild the home or impair the look of the home at all. I want it to blend into the neighborhood, because that's why I chose that neighborhood, is I liked its small characteristics. Our intention is to add space for spring, summer, and fall enjoyment with quality and durable craftsmanship, other than putting in a screened-in aluminum porch. My statement for practical difficulty is the lot has a large front yard radius in the Triton Manor subdivision. One of the irregularities is the very small backyard that I have. The current setback is 31.7 feet to the home, and there are no other properties in the Triton subdivision that mimic the same property layout. Even though the Triton subdivision is, a lot of the homes have irregular lots to begin with. That brings the characteristics and the charm of the neighborhood, and that's why I was interested in it. The characteristics were not created by the current owner or the previous owner, but it was designed from the land of development from the subdivision layout from the original build. If there are any questions in regards to the landscaping, pretty much tore everything out right now, because the landscaping hasn't been worked on in 10 years, and it's a mess. So we took everything out of it to clean it all up, but I plan on putting in some landscaping to give the backyard a little bit of privacy, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for this petitioner? Mr. Krent?
Have you spoken with any of your neighbors, adjacent neighbors, about this project?
One of the neighbors actually came, actually two of the neighbors, my next door neighbor, adjacent to the back of the lot, he came and talked to me about the same week that I was supposed to be here last month. He said he didn't have any problems with it. And then the neighbor across the street from the front of my home came over and asked me if there's anything to sign so he would approve the construction for the project. They both asked if they could come over and I could explain it to them. I did.
Did you happen to bring any statement from those neighbors?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any other board members? Seeing none, thank you, sir. If you could have a seat. And at this time, we'll open the public hearing. If there are members of the public who would like to address the board regarding this variance request, please step forward. Public hearing is open. Seeing there's no interest in speaking to the board on this particular issue for public hearing is now closed. So we'll bring it back to the board for consideration, discussion, and also maybe perhaps a report from Mr. Evans to Mr. Krent's question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That front yard setback is 25 feet, and that would have to be maintained along the entire street radius.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other comments, questions, or a motion to be made by any member of the board? Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, based upon the information provided by the petitioner and the city staff, especially looking at the irregular shape of the property, the curvature of the street, and the fact that there is no opposition from the neighbors expressed to the board, at least, or the city staff, I would move that we approve the variance request.
Second.
Moved by Lambert, seconded by Bloomingdale. Or any discussion on this item? Mr. Eisenbacher.
I believe the letter that was submitted by the petitioner was very succinct in laying out very good reasons why all the criteria for us to approve it were met, or are met.
Thank you. I would just comment that if you look at this diagram on the screen, I think it kind of sets the tone of what we're really truly trying to bite our teeth into. So this very, almost a half moon parcel, on one side, the home is very close to the southern property line there. And obviously because of the requirement to have a backyard, it's different than a side yard. The rules have been set a long time ago, but when I looked at this in our packet before tonight, I said to myself, well, you know, it works on one side, and we're not talking about nearly as being close to the back property line as the side yard, and since it is irregular, there is a hardship, I do believe, so I'll be voting in favor of this motion. Any other comments by other board members? Hearing none, Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. Congratulations, sir, you have your variance. Related to new cases tonight, item B, we have a variance request from Jason Morozek, 470 West Square Lake, in order to construct a roof over the existing front porch, a 22.5-foot variance for the required 50-foot front yard setback is required from this board, if we're going to grant it perhaps. So Mr. Evans, could you please present the facts of the situation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is located in a residential area on the north side of Square Lake, east of Crooks Road. On the overhead, I've outlined the subject property in red, and the property on either side are similarly situated. And on this next overhead in yellow, I've overlaid the zoning classification. The subject property is zoned single-family residential, as is all surrounding property. Now, the nature of this request involves building a small roof with posts over the existing front landing. So I've circled that area here. This is a picture of the front of the house provided by the applicant. And this is a sketch plan of what the applicant wants to do, and the subject matter involves this roof structure here and these two posts. He wants to add on to the house. Now, this overhead is a site plan prepared by the applicant. Square Lake is at the bottom, and the zoning ordinance requires that any new additions to this parcel, or excuse me, to this house, be set back from Square Lake at least 50 feet from the Square Lake front property line. The existing house is set back 33.1 feet, and with the addition, he'll have a 27.5 foot setback, so he needs a variance of 22.5 feet if he is to proceed with this project. I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? Mr. Eisenbacher.
I thought I saw it in the notes when I was reviewing it, but this house predates the widening of the road, correct? By a considerable amount.
I believe, let me confirm the construction date of this house, but I do believe it, yeah, okay, 47, that's what I thought it was. 1947 predates that.
Predates the city.
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, at this point in time, we were going to ask the petitioner to come forward and please present the information you'd like to share with the board. Please state your name.
Jason Morozek, live at 470 West Square Lake Road, and I'm asking for a small variance over the front door for a gable. Through the winter months, I have problems because there's really no overhang, and it's a liability issue with snow, especially this past winter with the snow. The house was, I think, built 1947, and through the years, when Troy became a city, they, purchased property to widen the road, sidewalk, so it doesn't leave me a whole lot there so I'm asking for a variance. Really, that's all I got.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Are there any, please stay there just for
Okay.
a moment. just in case there's questions. Any board members like to ask a question of this petitioner or make a comment? Mr. Lambert.
One quick question. It looks like you're drawing here, essentially, the covering is going to come out about 5 foot 6 inches, or?
Yep.
Okay.
5.5 feet out, 6 feet wide, and also I have support from my neighbors also that have signed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is that a document?
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Is that a document that you had signed? If you could,
Yeah.
we could pass that through,
Sure.
that'd be good.
Perhaps give it to Mr. Lambert, and we'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
And it'll go into the public record then as well. Thank you so much.
All right,
have a
thank
seat.
you.
So as this document is coming before the board, at this point in time, we can open the public hearing up on this matter. If you would like to address the board on this particular variance request, please step forward, state your name. Seeing that there's not a person here interested in doing that, we're going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and perhaps action. There you go. Mr. Courtney.
Yes, since he could, without us, build this at the back end of the house instead and cover the front entrance at the back, I think I'd go along with and move that we approve the request, since it's a logical request.
Okay, there's a motion for approval of the variance request. Is there a second?
Support. Oh,
Mr.
you're quicker.
Mr. Eisenbacher. Okay, Mr. Eisenbacher seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, just one point. And we had something similar in another area in Troy, which I think was part of Mr. Krent's package he's taken to the Planning Commission. I think the difference with this situation is, as was noted in the discussion, the widening of Square Lake is kind of eaten away at the front end of the property, and also the fact we're only talking about 5.5 feet of covering on that porch. So I think this is a little different situation, and I believe the reasoning for the variance is quite well stated because of the widening of the road and the difficulty that's posed for the petitioner.
Thank you. Mr. Krent?
I agree with the other board members. In addition, I took a look at the place today, and the homes on either side of this subject home has additions that come out at least 5, if not 6 feet beyond the front line of all those homes. So this is just in fitting with the neighborhood, so I would be in favor of this.
Okay, anyone else? Oh yes, we have a letter on file that was presented to us. Yeah, I guess we did all see this, but we have to mention it for the public record. So the petitioner brought forward a petition from 2 neighbors, it seems, both who live on Square Lake, very in close proximity to the address, and both in favor, neighbor support on each side of the home. So both neighbors on both sides support this variance request. So that will be in the public record, and there's, once again, a combination letter between 2 people in favor of this request. So seeing no other comment being brought forward by a board member, I believe, Mr. Evans, we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale.
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Mr. Courtney.
Yes.
Congratulations, you have your variance. Moving on to the final variance request we have before us tonight related to Mike Roberts for Continental Services, 700 Stevenson Highway, a variance to allow parking, loading, and maneuvering of trucks in the front yard. Mr. Evans, could you please present the facts of the situation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This subject property is located at 700 Stevenson Highway. On the overhead is the property circled on the east side of Stevenson, north of 14 Mile Road. I've zoomed in on the property. It's a typical rectangle shape. The zoning of the subject property is a research center. To the south is office, and across Stevenson to the west is an integrated industrial business. Now, the subject matter of this variance request involves uses in the front yard. So on this overhead, I've highlighted in red the front yard area that we're talking about. Now, a little history behind this request. In October of 2012, this board did grant a variance for the applicant to store and have 3 trucks in that front yard area, 2 of these smaller trucks on the top here, and 1 of these larger semi-tractor trailer trucks. Now, the ordinance does not allow parking, loading, and maneuvering of trucks in the front yard. What they're asking for now is to expand that variance to allow 9 trucks for maneuvering, parking, and loading in the front yard. And I'll turn it back over to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Are there any questions or comments? Mr. Bloomingdale?
Do we know if there's any utilities or anything under the area where they would like to expand their parking lot?
I'm not aware that they're asking to expand the parking lot, unless
Or
I'm
this
reading it
area that
wrong.
they're- yeah.
They're just putting trucks in an area, a different area than where they were more trucks in an area they were allowed. I don't know about utilities, and perhaps the applicant can let us know.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, Mr. Evans, when this came in front of us before, and I believe the schematic up there shows it, we asked as part of the condition that there be more shrubbery or trees or something put out in that area there. Has anyone from your office, maybe you in particular, gone out there to check to make sure that was actually done as part of the variance that came in front of us 2 years ago?
You know, I can double check. I would hope that that's been done by now.
And the petitioner may be able to tell us if he
Sure,
knows, so.
sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
I can confirm that the shrubbery is in place. Looks very nice. Some big trees there, I'm sure that were probably there prior, but that is as of this afternoon, so that provision was complied with.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from board members? Seeing none, we can call Mr. Roberts forward or his representative to address the board on this variance request. Good evening. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Matt Hathorn with Rossetti Architects.
And you represent Continental Services?
Correct.
Okay, welcome.
Just to kind of answer that last question, what you see on that diagram that was just up, that diagram, what you see there with the kind of with the brown transparency underneath it, the dark green circles, all that's new planning per the conditions of the previous variance.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it possible to go through the presentation that I forwarded you?
Let me see what I can do for you here.
So this is the first diagram. This is essentially what complying with that previous variance would look like. You see the 2 trucks that Paul mentioned that are 25 feet, and you see the longer truck, which would be the semi, which occasionally, I think a couple times a week, shows up to deliver supplies. Mr. Barty's business has grown quite a bit. He's got 14 new clients. With that are the addition of what you see there on the diagram now is several more 25-foot trucks that he's got a place on the, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, great, thanks. Here, which to comply with the variance, he has to park in this area here. Unfortunately, those parking spaces are 19 to 20 feet in length. And this is, on this slide right here, as you can see, the photo in the upper left is from the front entry. You can see the trucks parked in that zone. I think what it does is it virtually extends the loading, shipping, and receiving area from what is the front yard, and extends it around to also the side yard where potential clients come to visit. So visually, it rather than being in a parking lot, it feels like you're in a shipping and receiving zone. If you go back one slide, sorry. Am I changing that or?
No, I am.
Okay. Next slide. You can see the image on the lower right is an image taken recently with the trucks complying with that variance. You can see the trucks to the right are the nine or so trucks complying with the variance. They're actually very visible. I don't think they're really protected by the landscaping or the berm. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Again, some more images of the trucks complying with the variance. Essentially what I did is I walked down Stevenson taking a sequence of photographs. The top left, obviously, further towards the south, and then to the right, moving a little bit further north, and then the bottom left, those evergreens are the new landscaping that were supplied by the previous variance. You can see they do a pretty good job of screening the trucks. Next slide, please. This is essentially a field study B. I went out to the site and I had them move the trucks to what we're hoping will be this variance accepted, where the trucks are allowed to park in the front yard, consolidated in one location by the shipping and receiving, where they're out of the way of the essentially the main parking for the building and visually concealed by the berm. So next slide. This is again going through that same sequence with the trucks parked along that berm. You can see towards the right here, those trucks aren't there anymore. They're all stacked here and essentially screen each other. You can see obviously the first one and the second one moving down. The trucks are parked, in this area. The evergreens do a great job of screening, and then as you move down further, again, it's really very difficult to view the trucks. Then a side-by-side comparison. This is complying with existing variance, and this is complying with proposed variance. Unfortunately, when we took the picture for the proposed variance, we had an extra truck here or something, but if you can try to ignore that, you can see here versus this. Whereas essentially having all those trucks parked alongside each other along that berm is barely a difference. So, when the owner asked me to put this presentation together over the phone, he told me, actually having the trucks in the side yard is actually more visible. I really didn't believe him. I thought, well, I'm going to go down there and see and put this presentation together, and I was convinced just immediately how messy the site looked with the trucks parked in the front yard and the side yard. The owner would like to extend the landscaping even further, as you can see here, to cover those trucks. So now I believe we have a situation where we're actually concealing the trucks more so than the previous variance. And then again, side by side, this is the field study B with the proposed variance without the landscaping, and then this is with the additional landscaping.
Thank you very much. Mr. Evans, could you just move back one? So you're saying the one to the right is the proposed landscaping?
Yes.
Okay.
I wish I'd done a side.
This is like you created on the computer. It's not.
Yeah. These
Sure.
trees were added in Photoshop.
Right. So that was the one thing I was wondering at the beginning when we saw where the landscape berm was, why wasn't it extended out? If you're going to be creating more trucks, I think it seems pretty clear that they're pretty well hidden as it is. And I have some expertise in working in that neighborhood. I used to work in college across the street at Ryder Truck Rental. And it's interesting that the rental trucks that they have, which would be considered the side yard, not the front yard, but are right up on, getting very close to the sidewalk, and there isn't any screening like the proposed nice landscaping that you have there. And so as people drive by, they can clearly see these bright yellow rental trucks, and some of them get banged up over time. So I think that if that's what you're proposing, that seems to be very reasonable in my consideration here. Do you have anything else you want to share with us at this time?
I'm willing to answer any questions.
Sure. Any questions for this petitioner? Mr. Courtney?
Just one. Were you involved in the previous requests?
Yes.
Okay. That-
Mr. Bloomingdale?
A couple questions. The height of the berm, do you know how high that berm is from grade?
Just from the photographs, it's about 5.5 feet or so.
Okay, maybe a little higher than that, I think, 6 feet, something like that, to the top.
Yeah,
And the trucks are obviously higher than that, so that answers that question.
right.
I see first of all, I'd like to say it's a beautiful area. That's the first time I've been down in that. I went down there today. Everything should look that good. Coming north on Coolidge, you do have a lot of visibility of these trucks. And I think you're going to have it still with the berm you're proposing. A question that got away from me. Are you relocating your, I paced it off, it's pretty hard to tell. You know, you're walking uphill and who knows what kind of stride you're taking, but are you going to relocate the shrubbery? Or, in other words, are you going to eat into that berm that far?
This is, you can see the dark brown. This is existing here. That will remain as is, and we will essentially extend, you know, pretty close to the property line, this additional landscaping here.
Okay. All right, I missed that. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on this side? Thank you very much. You can have a seat. Thank you for your time. At this point in time, we're going to open the public hearing on this issue. We'll call anyone forward who would like to make a comment. Yes, sir. Please state your name for the record and maybe relationship to the property.
My name is Rob Krockmull at 320 Martin Street in Birmingham. I'm with Maple Management, LLC. We manage all of the common areas of the Robbins Executive Park West, which ranges between 500 and 1420 Stevenson Highway. So all of those buildings on the east side of Stevenson Highway. The 700 building is a part of that park. The plan that they've put together here to ask for a variance does fit within our documentation for covenants and declarations of covenants and restrictions for our park. But I'm also here representing the interests of the 550 Stevenson building, which is directly to the south of the 700 building, as well as the 750 Stevenson building, which is just northeast of this building. And both of those owners are in favor of this plan. The 700 building has done a great job over the last couple of years investing a lot of money in their facility. They've done a first-class job with their landscaping, and we know they'll continue to do the same thing. So we are in full favor of what they're proposing here.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Anyone else would like to comment during the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. I would say before we take any other action in the packet, there weren't any letters that were presented in favor or opposed, but we do have a letter via staff on our table here from Special Tree, and saying that they would approve, or they approve of granting the variance. So that letter will be in the public record for review. And are there other members of the committee who would like to make a comment? Mr. Eisenbacher?
Thank you. Just like you, I have business in the area, so I travel through there quite often. It's also not too far from my home. And it's hard for me to even imagine that being the front yard of the building. I mean, legally,
Amen.
the way it is stuff, but that's the back of the building in terms of the layout of the site. So, I mean, the common sense is that putting the trucks in the back is the best spot, especially since it's been very nicely screened. It's not visible. I took my kids on a bike ride down that path last weekend, and you can't see past that burn because it's pretty tall with the trees on top.
Sure. Thank you. Anyone else like to make a comment or a motion? Mr. Krent?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve the variance. Go for a second.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Mr. Eisenbacher seconds. Any discussion?
Yep.
Mr. Lambert first?
Wait, Mr. Krent. I wanted to make sure that part of Mr. Krent's motion included the expansion of the landscaping as indicated in the one drawing here. I assume that's what he intended, so I wanted to make sure
That's
that
what's
was on the
proposed.
records.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, David, clarifying that. Absolutely, that was part of the proposal, was to include the expanded plantings to the south of the existing ones.
Mr. Krent, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that this is obviously a better solution than what exists today. The trucks will be less noticeable from Stevenson. It makes a better appearance for clients coming into the building. All around, every aspect of it, it's an improvement over the existing, so I'll vote to approve.
Thank you. I also think that there's a public safety issue of, as the petitioner's representative described, where the public and potential clients are coming in, side door, if there's all these trucks parked there. I don't know of too many businesses which are required to park their fleet, which comes and goes, because that's how you make money, and you have to satisfy your customers, when the general public is coming also perhaps to pay a bill or to get information from the business too. They're usually separate areas. So I think this is a better solution for, like I said, the public safety issue. Any other comments? Mr. Lambert? Go ahead.
I do believe that we should confirm if there's anything underground there. And also, I think our motion should be conditional on the fact that, obviously, if we have to have access to it, well, then that has to be granted. I would assume that if whoever's looked at this, there probably isn't anything there, but
Well, I don't think they're expanding their parking lot, so if having trucks parked there as opposed to different vehicles there is,
well, unless I'm mistaken, they're extending the parking lot 30 feet.
No.
No,
Existing parking lot,
Say again?
no.
just new parking spots.
They're just moving where they're parking.
All right. My mistake. Thank you. I read that one colored bar as being another 30 feet.
Okay. Mr. Lambert, did you have
Yeah,
something?
it's probably more of a clarification for my own mind and maybe any other members who might be curious about this. Essentially, we're not finding a new hardship here. When we dealt with this 2 years ago, we found the hardship or the practical difficulty of the fact that, I believe as Mr. Eisenbacher had mentioned, that what the code or the ordinance says is a backyard is actually not really a backyard, or vice versa. So in essence, what we're saying is the hardship already existed. This is just a better way of addressing that hardship. Is that correct?
that sounds reasonable, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And even though you brought greater clarity to it, Mr. Lambert, I think the conversation here was on that note. So any other comments? Mr. Evans, I believe we're prepared for a vote.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Mr. Bloomingdale?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Courtney?
Yes.
Mr. Eisenbacher?
Yes.
Congratulations, you have your variance. So now we move on to item number 5, which are communications, plural, to the board. I don't believe we have any, but Mr. Evans may provide some light on that.
Nothing new.
Moving on to miscellaneous business, is there any other business before the board here tonight? Hearing none, we can move on to public comment. Are there any, I'm going to open the public comment now. Not a hearing, but any members of the public who would like to address the board on items that are not related to the agenda? Hearing none, we're going to move on to the final and most important part of the agenda, which is the adjournment. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. Have a very good evening.